I think it sprung a leak. I guess taking those bolts out wasn't such a good idea. Actually, that was the whole idea. There is a drain plug up there that I've taken out, but that wasn't doing much, so I thought bugger it would start undoing the little oil pan that it has. I'm guessing the differential will be right under there, looking at where those shafts go. The crown wheel will be at the bottom of that pan. The plug's over there with a bit of metallic debris on it, but not much. This stuff smells wonderful. I like gear oil. I know a lot of people say it makes them sick, but whatever this stuff is, it smells wonderful. It is gear oil though, it's not ATF, it's pink, but not ATF pink. Don't know what exact grade it is, but it'd be in the manual somewhere. Either way, I might just let that drain out before I loosen that last bolt off. Otherwise I've got a feeling I'll end up with an armpit full of gear oil, and that wouldn't be as enjoyable. Yeah, you can see where that shaft goes into the gearbox. I'm guessing that side I can just undo as it is. Yeah, not too sure. Okay, you can see the crown wheel in there. Doesn't look like a normal rear wheel drive diff, and that's for a good reason, because it's driven directly off one of the shafts in the gearbox rather than relying on a tail shaft to come in at a 90-degree angle to the rest of the drive. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, fair bit of oil in there too. So I'll put the pan back on to stop any dribbles, and that should at least minimise the problems with pulling the shafts out and dumping oil everywhere. Looks like I have to separate those lower balls though. That'll be fun. Actually, I might just pull those arms off as they are, drop the whole lot. Yeah, bugger it. I'm not going to separate the ball joints. There's nothing really salvageable on those hub assemblies. I know the wheel bearings are shot, and those rotors are pretty much shot. So, yeah. Okay, we're making progress. I've got that bolt out. That pretty much just fell straight out as soon as I took the nut off it. I do have the jack under here, but not under much tension. If I release it, it doesn't even go anywhere as such. I've also undone the D mount there, the D bushing. So it's fair to say once the car's off the ground and the wheels are unloaded, the strut assembly is the only thing that's under tension. Like that's a complete unit. You'd have to compress these springs down and release some collets at the top to take the spring off. It's sort of like a motorcycle shock absorber unit. You have to compress the spring down and pull collets out of the top before you can take the spring off. So yeah, that's completely unbolted. I just have to undo this sway bar, I guess that is. And yeah, I should be able to drag the whole lot out. But then I might try and remove this wheel hub at the same time and at least leave the shaft in the transmission. Yeah, I might try and take the wheel hub off as it is. I'll show you how the bearings and everything are set up in these. You do need a press or a proper pulling device to remove the bearings on these. They're a bit tight. But yeah, that's the CV shaft, or drive shaft. Anyway, onward with more. As you can see, that bit just floats around now. It's no longer under load. All the spring tension's contained by the top and bottom plate on the strut. Unlike a conventional coil spring car like the old Holdens and things, you'd have to compress the spring and then unbolt everything, otherwise it flies out at you and takes your head off. Kind of dangerous. Okay, well, these nuts are renowned for being excessively tight, as I found. I'm sure if you had someone to sit in the car and keep their foot on the brake pedal hard, you could probably undo it without damaging your rotors, but because I'd already disconnected the brakes and I don't have anyone to stand on the pedal, I basically just had to put the vice grips onto the rotor and lock it against the caliper. That basically destroys the rotor, but since these ones are junk anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but be warned, these nuts are extremely tight. They're not left-hand thread, they're regular right-hand thread, anti-clockwise to undo them, but they are exceedingly tight. Hammering a breaker bar or something like that doesn't work. You actually just want constant pressure. A nice long 2.5 foot long cheetah bar with a big, I think it was what size socket was I using? I just undone this side. 1.25 inch, which is a tiny bit loose on it. It might be metric, but overall 1.25 inch drive does really nicely on these. But yeah, that's what I was using as a cheetah bar and vice grips to lock it up. So it's a bit of a hackery job, but it works. Okay, so before I remove all the brake parts, I just thought I'd like to show how these single pot calipers work. It's basically a reactionary thing. When you apply fluid in through the line, it pushes this piston in here out. You can see I push the piston all the way back in, but it pushes it out against this pad, and it's sort of a reactionary thing because it's applying force on here, but it also pushes away on the sliding half because there's a moving half here. See how that moves in and out? It also pulls this part against the pad, or pushes it against the pad on the outside, and it grips evenly. When people ask about seized rotors, it means these slide pins are rusted solid and it's only pushing on one side. This pad's not doing anything. So it's pushing on one side and braking very unevenly. Now I thought this rotor was worn a bit unevenly. It does seem to be. You can see this side's a lot thinner than that one, so even though it's free now, it might have been sticking at one point. But as you can see, once the piston pushes that way, it pulls it that way. And that's what this slide assembly is for. They're kind of interesting. They're really a nice innovation over the old drum brakes. And these are just held on with by a couple of 10mm cap screws. 12mm I think that is actually. Yeah, that one's stuck. I'm going to drop it anyway. Yeah, now I've got the disc off. If you're wondering what ventilated discs means when you're buying a car or buying brakes, it means they have vent slots through them like this. It's like a big fan. A solid disc, this would all be solid iron. Vented disc, they have slots through them. So these stay cooler quicker, or they cool down faster. Typically a little more expensive than solids, but performance wise your brakes stay a lot cooler using these, so sometimes you're better off buying vented discs, especially if you like pushing it with your car, having a bit of fun down the hills and things like that. But this is about ready to separate the rest of it out. I just got to undo that sway bar, and or whatever that is, I think that's a sway bar, solid steel rod. Undo that and undo the top of the strut tower, and I should just be able to pull that out. I'll just whack the end of that shaft and punch the thing out. It'd probably damage a good CV joint if you were to whack that shaft. The manual shows a fork-shaped tool going in here, so I might try and separate it there, but I know these shafts are pretty old. Yeah, they're original shafts. They've got a Daewoo sticker still on them. Yeah, they're past it. I know the wheel bearings are past it. They're noisy as hell. So most of this stuff's going to be junked. But I'll definitely dismantle one of these CV shafts and show you how the principle of the constant velocity joint and everything work. Alright, well that's that done. I've got my little drive shafts, and I've got the strut assemblies off without having to try and separate those lower ball joints. That wouldn't be fun. Looks like they're part of the arm too. Yeah, I'm guessing you'd have to send this whole thing off to be remanufactured. That's a bit expensive. But then again, these look all factory, so it's lasted the life of the car. Even these debushings are tight, they haven't worked loose. They're still in really good condition. But that's the wheel hub assembly. They require a hydraulic press to knock the bearings out after removing that big circlip. Yeah, some interesting bits. I'm not sure if I'd use much of it. I've got a feeling most of this stuff's going to get junked. But yeah, that's the top of the strut tower with its retainer. That's all one compressed unit. And that one there I left the rotor and caliper on. I'm not keeping any of that. As you can see, that's the lower ball joint. There's possibly some useful bits on here, but I can't see myself doing much with this engine and transmission apart from stripping it down, so the only thing I'll really keep is the rear axle. The front stuff, well, there's not much use. I could probably try and punch these out and save them as wheel hubs. I mean, I've still got a set of 5 wheels and tyres from the car that I can use for trolleys and things. But apart from that, it's pretty much junk. And since I need a press to get these hubs off, I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so definitely no retainers to hold the shafts in once the hubs are off, apart from a little clip. This end goes through the side of the transaxle, and it's just a little clip here to offer a bit of resistance to get them out of there. All I had to do was get something between the collar and the face of the housing and go pop, and out it came. Easy enough. I just pry it against that surface there and the metal housing of the gearbox, and away it came. So job done, they're out. All I've got to do is loosen up engine mounts underneath and then lower the car down and start removing all the ancillaries from the top. Should be able to drop the engine out fairly soon. Alright, well the rest of the exhaust's out. I already dropped the rear muffler because that was all rotted out. Just took 2 bolts out and the whole thing just fell apart before it got out of the car. That one's probably not half bad, but still it's not far off being trash. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything left in the cat converter. Let's get the cordless saber saw and cut, throw the rest out. The rest of it's not really useful for anything, unfortunately. I mean, it's fairly specialised. Looks like that's probably from me dragging the flange across the face of it. It could be a blowout though, blowing the gasket out. Yeah, I can get plenty of this stuff at pretty much nothing and much better condition, so we throw it out.